If you're a facilities manager at a university, you know students rely on the cafeteria for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and the occasional late-night snack. So when a dishwasher breaks down and dirty plates pile up, the mess hall can turn messy in the blink of an eye. Enter Grainger. With over 1 million industrial-grade products and fast delivery, the product you need now is never far away. So you can turn that dishwasher back into a lean, clean washing machine. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Thank you very much for tuning in to the No Fruit Podcast. So today we have a special guest. He embodies a unique blend of experiences. You know, he's a Christian, a public accountant, podcast host, author, farmer, husband, and father. And he understands the challenges of juggling faith, finances, family, and a fulfilling work. But I really want to talk to him about the prime Angus cows that he raises. I mean, I read his bio and I am hungry. But we will talk about that a little later. We will be right back to you after this intro.
Let's talk about love and marriage the way that God intended. Life experience, here we share it. The No Fruit Podcast. Tune in from any platform. No Fruit Podcast. Will help your spirit transform.
And we thank you very much for tuning in. We have none other than Ralph Estep Jr. Thank you very much for coming on the show, sir.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to your audience. I'm looking forward to it. Sounds like it's going to be a great deal of fun today.
Most definitely. So before we get into anything else, before we get into the weeds, there is a part in there where you are a farmer, started your LLC. I believe it was in 2014. And you have these, Black Angus cows that you're raising. So let me ask a question, right? What is it like to have that beef fresh?
I'll tell you a funny story about that, okay? Because I was raised in the city, in the suburbs.
Right.
I wasn't raised on a farm, right? So the wife and I, we bought this farm out here in Middletown, Delaware, and I had this huge space. I was like, you know what? I should put some cows out here. I've always wanted to do something like that. So I found this guy not too far from here. He was selling cows. He was selling some young cows and a bull. So I said, you know what? We'll try it.
Okay.
So I was at my office at the time where the guy delivered the things. My cousin and my wife were there. So he drops these cows off, puts them in the pasture. And I got home from work that day and I'm like, oh, they're cute little cows. They're big cows. They're about 1,000 pounds apiece. Big hairy things, right? So the next morning I decided, okay, I better go feed these cows. Like we had an area for hay, but I would give them little buckets of grain at the time, right? So this is a crazy story. You're never going to believe this, right? So I walk out into the pasture. Now I've got 3 female, they're called heifers. They hadn't had a baby yet, so they're called heifers. And I had a bull.
Okay.
So everybody told me, look, be careful. The bull can be dangerous. So don't turn your back on the bull. So I'm watching this bull the whole time I'm right here, and I got these buckets of feed. Well, with that, one of these heifers comes up and just about runs me to the ground.
Wow.
And I said, what in the world? So I called this guy on the cell phone. I said, you got to come get these crazy cows because I can't handle this.
Yes.
So that was the start of the process. But then I learned how to deal with them. And, one of the things a lot of people don't know, so I called this guy and I said, what do I do? He said, if they charge you again, just tap them on the nose. I said, wait a second. I said, I got a Volkswagen Bug coming at me. That's about the size of it, right? And this Volkswagen, so the next day I got out there, I'm shaking, right? I'm shaking, got the buckets in my hand, and out comes one of these heifers getting ready to pull this stun again, right? So I just reached out and tapped her on the nose. Heifer went way back. I haven't had a problem with them since.
Oh, wonderful.
wow.
So, it's something I had no idea about, but it was a fascinating thing.
Yes.
So that's
Little
what it's
gentle
like to
touch.
be a farmer.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. I mean, and I'm going to say this, we're right down the street from you. We're in Philly, right?
right.
So we understand that city life. And we very much know Middletown, Delaware,
Yes.
Newark, Delaware, we're in and out of Wilmington,
Rehoboth and
all
all
so
those
we
places.
understand.
Yeah.
But what was it like to really transition into being a farmer? Like, what was that? Because a lot of times we can't envision that, especially those of us that are from the city, because my wife and I, when we first got married, and now granted, we'll be married almost 25 years. We're married almost 25 years. We'll be 25 in September. And
You
so
and me both. We're going to do 25 in September also.
Oh,
September the
wonderful.
2nd.
Oh, we're the ninth. We're close. I got married
Okay.
on my listen, I got married on my birthday, so I never forget my
Never forget the
anniversary.
date.
That's funny. That's funny.
Always celebrating, always celebrating.
And so, but when we first got married, I said, hey, I want to kind of go back where my grandma was born. My grandma was born in South Carolina.
Okay.
And so, but my wife kind of was a little apprehensive. So
Mhm.
we kind of stayed up here, um, you know,
And
just
now
to
that I'm
transition.
older, I'm like, hey, well, maybe we should transition. So we have looked at property in Delaware. So
Yes, we
we'll
have.
talk to you later about some of
I
that.
know that's
So
right. but
Absolutely.
what was that like for you? Really being a city boy, right? That idea and transitioning into being a farmer. What was that like?
I'll tell you one thing, it was a lot about my faith walk, believe it or
Mhm.
not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because, it's that point of like, I understood numbers. I've been doing this since I was 8 years old. I started doing accounting work when I was eight, believe it or not. I grew
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
up in this industry. Mom and dad split up. Last thing dad said on the way out the door is, son, you're the man of the house.
Mm.
Mhm.
So I've been man of the house since I was eight, which has been a crazy ride. And my mom will be dead 2 years. But let me just tell you right now, being man of the house at eight is crazy. So anyway,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
decide we're going to buy this farm. I'm going to get to your answer right now. And I thought, you know what? I've done so many things that are computer based, but they're
Mm-hmm.
having that they rely on me.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm providing their food, I'm providing their shelter, I'm providing. I don't wear clothing, but that food, clothing, shelter.
Right,
But
right.
no,
They
and
wear
it humbles
shoes.
you.
Yeah.
It humbles you because one of the things I talk about in my show all the time is called financial stewardship,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the key things that the Bible talks about. That's why I do my Ask Ralph podcast show. Well, I have to steward these cows. The Bible talks about keep watch over your herds.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So for me, it was an experience of recognizing in a lot of ways the relationship that God has with us. You
Right.
know, we're his herd, for lack of a better way of
Mhm.
saying it.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And it really puts things into perspective because you think about, a lot of people said to me, like when we first started doing, I said my kids were younger at the time. They're 23 and 27 now. We've been
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
doing it for 10 years. I said, don't ever name them. I said, because when I look out in the pasture, I see prime rib, I see brisket, and because like seriously, because a lot of people get upset when you
Attach.
say, oh, we're going to
Yes.
send such and such to the butcher shop.
Right.
But see, here's the thing I know about my relationship with God. Everything has a purpose.
Yes.
Right.
And God provided that for us. There's a
Mhm.
purpose in that. Now, our cows are treated with the utmost respect while they're here.
Yeah.
They are treated like kings and queens,
Mm-hmm.
but they have a purpose. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, it was really kind of a cool time to put back all the things that I'd learned in my trade and all that sort of thing into this farming. And I
Mhm.
absolutely love it. There are days when I just go out there and I just take it back. I take it all in, right? I say,
Mhm.
God, look at this. What you and up to a couple of years ago, we actually had babies born here. There was
Mm.
one year we had 12 babies born
Oh,
on the farm. Let
wow.
me just tell
Wow.
you right now, if you've never experienced that, that'll bring tears to your eyes
Mhm.
Mm.
because you realize I'm gonna share a little bit piece of that, right? So the first time we ever had a baby born, I didn't know what to expect. They kind of do their own thing. Well, I'm looking at the back of this cow, and out comes these two little pieces. It looks like a yellow thing, right? I'm looking at this and going, "What is this?"
Mhm.
But it reinforced how good God is because you know what that was.
Mm.
So when a cow is born, God built into the development this yellow, it's like a wax,
Mhm.
and it goes around the hooves of the cow so that when the mom's pushing the cow out, it doesn't cut the mom.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I say to myself, wow, anybody wants to say there's no God, look at that.
Mhm.
Because
Wow.
God had the forethought to know this is what we need to do. So that's what I'm saying. So in a lot of ways, the farm is like my place to ground myself, literally.
Yes.
So I hope that answers your question, but that really is what it is for me.
And I'm asking that because that is a lot of transition. Sometimes we don't understand that, but listening to your story, it really sounds as if it would have been a natural transition for you, regardless of wherever it might have been, because of how grounded you are in your faith. So how has that faith been and that grounding, if you will, that foundation? How has that been the key to any and everything that you've done, touched, talked to, moved around, whatever it might have been? How important has that foundation been for you?
It's been absolutely the foundation of my life. My grandfather was an old Southern Baptist fellow.
Mhm.
And he always said to me, son, seek your own salvation.
Yeah.
So we would always have these deep conversations about the Lord and what that meant. And it was so countercultural because we live
Hmm.
in a world where if you talk about Christ, man, you're one of them holy rollers, one of the
Right.
Bible
Right.
thumpers. And you know what? It's interesting because like my whole career, up to about 2 years ago, I'm gonna tell you a story about this. So up to about 2 years ago, I was very secular. I had my Christian faith. I was saved when I was 13. I've led many people to salvation. The Bible talks about some plant seeds,
Mm-hmm.
some
Mm-hmm.
fertilize seeds,
Mm-hmm.
some water the seeds. But 2 years ago, my wife and my oldest son, now he's in the Coast Guard, we decided we're going to take a trip to Germany.
Mm.
And we went to Germany. I'd never been overseas before. And the first day we were there, we went to one of the concentration camps.
Mm.
And if you ever get the opportunities, it will change you. So picture this. I'm at Dachau, which was one of the first concentration camps in Germany. You
Mm.
walk through this gate and you're in this big open field, stone underneath of you, and you can see the barracks behind you.
Mm.
And then you start to think about who stood that ground 60, 70 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right.
Those were people that had no hope.
Mm-hmm.
And it changed me because I almost felt like the Lord grabbed a hold of me and said, Ralph, it's time to do something for the kingdom.
Right.
These
Mm.
folks that were standing here had no hope.
Mm-hmm.
These folks standing here, they didn't have any chance. So what have you done? I said, I always say this to people all the time. I don't want to get to that point of judgment where the Lord says, what have you done with your sorry self?
Right.
Mm.
Right.
So he spoke to me, he said, Ralph, it's time to give back. So that's why I do what I do now. So like you said, all of those things have led up to this.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that all along the way, because see, I believe that life is not a destination.
Mm-hmm.
There is no destination. There is an
Mhm.
ultimate destination. And I think we all share that. We know
Right.
where
Right.
we're heading. But you have to embrace the journey.
Journey. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the ways you embrace the journey is you learn from that. You realize that there's a connection between your faith and your finances. You can't separate the two things.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Real simple example. If you can't provide food, clothing, and shelter to you and your family, you are never going to get to God's purpose for your life. You can't
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
because you're so focused on trying to figure out how am I going to put food on the table for my kids. And see, when I was 8, being made man of the house. Now, my dad didn't run off to another country,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
but I lived in this crazy storm where my mom was very lower middle class and my dad was very wealthy. So, for example, I talked about this on my show last week. My mom's idea of stepping out for dinner was going to McDonald's or Burger
Mm.
King.
Mm-hmm.
My dad's was going to Seven Stars or Lebec Finn in Philadelphia.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
from
I
those you
remember
guys
that.
will know
Mhm,
about,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
But think about growing up in that atmosphere as a child.
Yes.
But what it did was I realized how disrespected my mother was. As
Mm.
an example, I guess I was about 9, 10 years old. My mom decides time to buy a new car, right?
Mhm.
So my sister and I, we were her full-time job. Now she had a job outside the house once my dad left also. So we're sitting at the
Mhm.
car dealership. And my mom is not a sophisticated person. She wasn't a sophisticated person. And I'm 10 years old taking all this in.
Mm.
And this car dealer is telling my mom, oh, we can get you in this car for this. We can get you in. And it all sounded great. My mom
Mhm.
decided, hey, $300, that's what I can afford to pay a month.
Mm-hmm.
We get ushered into the finance manager's office, and all of a sudden that payment's $400 a month.
Right.
Mm.
And my mom looks over at me, and this is what made me do what I do my whole life. My mom looks over at me and says, she called me Ralphie, right? Nobody gets away with that, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
She says, yeah, I probably shouldn't have said it because now I'm gonna start getting
I
email.
know,
Hey, Ralph,
right?
what's going on? But so my mom looks over at me and she goes, "That's not what we agreed to out there." Well, with that, this finance manager goes, "Shut up, kid."
Mm.
And I was like, "No, wait a second." And it was that moment, and I tie a bunch of stuff together now because I say, "Wow, that's what gave me this passion."
Mhm.
Yes.
Because I want to make sure people have knowledge. I want to make sure people have the skills because my mother could have easily got taken advantage of there in that scenario,
Mhm.
Right,
right?
right.
And that's the thing. So that's why I do what I do. And all of my life has led me to this point. So now I'm at this point where God has richly blessed me. He's given me an accounting practice that's been
Mm.
very good. So now I'm able to give back. And that's what I do every day. Yeah, people say, you do a daily show. Yeah, let me tell you,
Mhm.
that is a grind.
Mm-hmm.
But I look at it as my mission field.
Yes.
And that's where God has put me at this point. Now, I don't know what the next season of my life looks like,
Right, right.
along the journey. I'm just embracing the journey right now.
Where you are now,
But like
yeah.
getting back to your question, I really feel like all of these things have led me. God has given me
Mhm.
all of those things along the way. And I know I've gone all over the place on that one, but
Oh no, you good.
that's what really put me into where I am now.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. So a little bit like you like you said, you mentioned a whole lot there, but dive a little bit more into finances and faith and family. Like how do all of those mesh together? Because everyone comes to this with different ideals.
Right.
So you're
Oh,
giving
sure.
us your background, but I'm sure your wife had a different background. And how do you mesh those together and still move forward in the journey?
And that's the key, right? Because that's what you're talking about. Because all of us come from a different place. Like
Mm-hmm.
my wife, for example, she came from a place where the electric was getting shut off, the cable bill was getting shut off.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't come from that place. Like my
Mm-hmm.
mom struggled, but she paid her bills.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying my wife's family didn't pay their bills, but you're right. So all of us bring these different expectations to the table. I
Right.
liken it to luggage, right? So
Right.
when you get together with somebody, you bring your luggage, they bring their luggage. Well, the problem is a lot of times that luggage clashes, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You might have brown luggage, they got blue luggage. Those two things don't go around well. I know it
Right.
sounds like a silly example. But the truth of the matter is, in my view, the leading cause of divorce is finance. It's not infidelity.
Mm-hmm.
It's financial infidelity.
Right.
That's a huge thing.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna address your question right up. First thing I think you have to do, and this is where my faith comes in. Number
Mhm.
one thing, you got to seek God's guidance first
Mm-hmm.
in your finances. Make that the number one thing. And then you have to come to a point of being united. Like you're going to laugh when I say this. I had a client in the other night, and I said, I think the first thing you should do when you get together is pull each other's credit reports.
Right.
And they're like, have you lost your mind? I'm like, no, because here's
Yeah.
the thing. If you don't do that,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
6 months from now, you're going to say, oh, let's go rent an apartment together, or let's go buy a house together. And all of a sudden it's going to come out and you're going to be like, oh, I had no idea you didn't take care of your credit.
Right.
Oh, I didn't realize
Mhm.
you haven't saved for retirement. So, and it causes so much stress in
Mhm.
Right.
relationships. So,
Right.
relationships are hard to begin with. Look, my way put up for me for 25 years.
Mm.
That has not been easy. And in fact, I'm going to share a story with you. You don't mind if I share another story?
No,
Oh no,
go
we
ahead.
good.
You talk about relationships. Listen to this one. 2019, okay, end of 2018. My wife says, I've had enough with this marriage. I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, what does that mean? Well, she moved to South Carolina. And I'm thinking, what just happened? Like,
Yeah.
Mhm.
what?
Mhm.
Now, having gone back and looked at it, I realized I was a tyrant because I came from this place of
Mhm.
control. I came from this place of being in charge of everything. And my wife said, I had enough.
Mhm.
So she moved on, met with another guy, got engaged. I waited a couple months. Guess what I did? Found another woman, got engaged.
Mm-hmm.
And God said, no, folks, I got a different plan for you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Right. So about 2 or 3 months into this, my situation was a disaster. Like I didn't know what I was doing with this woman. Anyway, I'm not going to approach it. It was a disaster. So I just happenstance called my wife, and we had gotten real close to getting divorced. And I said, hey, what's going on with you? She goes, it's a disaster down here too. I says, well, what do you think we try it again? Now, this is the honest to God truth. She said, why don't you come get me? And I
Mm.
said, the Lord, because I had been praying every day, Lord, show me your way in this, right?
Yes.
So I came, got her. This is the truth. 2 days before the judge was fixing to sign that divorce decree. 2 days.
Hmm.
So you tell me the God of this world doesn't watch out for us?
Mhm.
Right.
Even when we were making, and look, I was a jerk. Like I was a tyrant. I was a controlling person.
Mhm.
And so that's so add finances to that, right?
Yeah,
Add
yeah.
finances to those type of things. You've got somebody that maybe they're not a saver. Like I see that a lot of times with clients. We have the
Right.
husband or the wife, one's a saver, one's a spender. Boy, that's tough.
Mhm.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because one person goes and writes a check and be like, you can't write a check. There's no money in the account.
Right,
Right.
yeah,
How's that?
yeah.
Right. Right.
And so that's the thing. So I think you have to start off with putting it before God first. Like,
Mhm.
I say this. I said this to a client the other night. I said, it amazes me how many people don't get on the same page financially. They'll have sex with somebody,
Mhm.
like they'll have that level of intimacy, but they won't share their finances. Are
Yeah.
you kidding me?
Mhm.
Because if you can't open up for that, I'm telling you, I guarantee you're going to be in divorce court or you're going to be
Mhm.
parting ways because at some point, one party's going to get frustrated and say, I've had enough.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So I think you got to start with prayer. And then the second thing, you had to be unified in a vision. You got to be
Mm.
on the same page. Like my plan is this, my plan is that. And listen, I buckled my wife on that one too, because I've always been look, here's the truth bomb, right? I'm the spender. My wife is the saver. I'm the impulse buyer, right? I think a lot of guys are like this. This is our guy thing, right? But here's the problem. And I didn't realize along the path how it was a constant source of like a dagger in my wife's back.
Mhm.
Because and look, I had that come to Jesus meeting when
Yeah,
she finally
yeah.
said to me, she goes, Ralph, how come my
Yeah.
friends and all my peers have money saved for retirement, but you and I don't?
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Mhm.
look, the
It's
Lord put
no
the bright
security.
lights on Ralph, right? He put the bright lights and he said, oh, you think you're good? You fix your relationship here first, dude.
Mhm.
And so I
Mhm.
had to finally bow down and say, look, Jennifer, my wife's name is Jennifer.
Mhm.
I said, I hear what you're saying because But it wasn't just that I had action because like you can have
Right.
the best intentions in the world, but if you don't do anything, if you don't put them
Right.
into action, and that just destroys relationships because
Yep.
then my wife said, basically what she was saying to me is, "You're not hearing me, Ralph.
Yeah.
You're not hearing
Mm-hmm.
me." And everything I was doing, like, "Hey, let's go buy a new car." And she's, "Oh yeah, that's great." But I wasn't hearing her.
Right.
I think that's so important. You got to stay out of debt. Debt is a relationship killer.
Mm-hmm.
Debt kills relationships. Another thing, I mentioned a word a few minutes ago about being financially, infidelity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know how many times I see that on a daily basis.
Yeah.
The husband doesn't know what the wife's doing. The wife doesn't know what the husband's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And you
they
got to
just talked
have,
about that on the news recently. I think that was, one of the things that people were struggling with. Like you
Mm-hmm.
said, a cause for uh, the relationship ending. It's not, cheating or anything like that. A lot of it
Right.
is just, hey, you have a secret bank account somewhere.
right.
And, that lends a lot to what you said with your wife. It's just sometimes you need that security, you know what I
Right.
mean? And having that separate account helps somebody feel more secure in themselves and in their relationship. So my one quick thing I want to say a little bit of what you're talking about is a lot of people don't seem to talk about finances. Like you said something about, hey, two people get together, they'll have sex and they'll go off and do these things together, but they don't sit down and talk about finances. And it's nothing it's not sexy, I guess. There's no TV shows
Mm.
about it. There's nothing like, you don't have any kids shows where the parents are sitting them down and saying, hey, we're going to open up a bank account today and we're going
Right.
to learn how to. So it's just not there. And so how do we make it part of our relationship and make it not so painful and so
Mm-hmm.
hard to talk about?
I'm glad you asked me that because I've got some ideas in mind.
Okay, share them.
The first thing, and you're going to laugh when I say this, you got to schedule regular money talks.
Mm-hmm.
You got to put that on the calendar
Mm-hmm.
and say, look, every Sunday after church or every Tuesday afternoon, whatever it is, you have a sit down with your spouse and you look over the credit card statement. You look over the bank statement. You talk
Mm-hmm.
about what's coming up, what bills are coming up, all those type of things. You've got to do that.
Right.
You also have to set up what I call a judgment-free zone.
Mm,
You have to be willing to accept that. Guess what? If you look in the mirror, the person looking back at you makes mistakes too.
right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, when you're pointing at somebody, it's pointing right back at you, the other foot, right?
Yes.
Right.
So you can't judge somebody because like it's very easy, especially if you're new in a relationship, right? Let me give you an example of this. So let's say you're dating somebody new and things are great, everybody's hitting it off and you're doing the thing on the town, everybody's excited, right? But then all of a sudden, let's just say the husband has some bad credit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the husband's like, oh man, I really got to tell her because this is getting serious.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if the first thing that the girlfriend says is, oh, how dare you? I can't believe you did that. And you did this and you did that. You got to realize that he's already there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So to have that judgment start, you're not going to help him.
Mm-hmm.
Now you could
Mhm.
say, look, this bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
And this bothers me because of X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And then you work on that. But then the next part of that is you got to be transparent. You got to be honest with
Mhm.
each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like I counseled a couple about, this has probably been 7 or 8 years ago. And they came into me, they're making $300,000 between the two of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
There's no way they should have had a problem making their bills. But every year they come into tax time, they always owe $10,000 in tax. Why? Because they changed their withholding, so they got more take-home pay.
Okay.
So I said to them, I said, here, I can help you. Here's what I want you to do. For the next 30 days, I want you to write down every dollar you spend. I mean, every single dollar.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Ralph, we can do that. That's a great idea. They come back in 30 days. They give me the piece of paper and it says, such and such for the mortgage, such and such for the car payment, utilities. And then at the bottom, it said ATM withdrawals $6,000.
Oh wow.
Mm.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. And I said, what? And I could be wrong. It was 5,000. I said, all right, well, let's talk about that. That's the elephant in the room.
Yes.
And they look at me with a straight face and say, that's none of your business. And I said, okay, so you either want to fix this or you don't. I said, where's the 6,000 going? Oh, well, that's this and that's. So turns out they each were hitting the Mac machine like once or twice a
Mhm.
week. Coffee, lunch.
Right.
It was financial infidelity. Now, it
Mhm.
wasn't like they were having an affair. It wasn't
Mhm.
like they were
Right.
cheating on each other, but they just weren't on the same page and they weren't being honest with each other.
Right.
So that leads me to my next thing. You got to set spending limits. One of the things I
Mhm.
talk about on my show all the time, and people don't like to hear the word budget because they think, well, that's a restriction, right?
Right.
But don't call it a budget. Call it an intentional spending plan.
Right.
Mm.
Be intentional. The Lord is intentional with the way he loves us. We need to be intentional with how we steward what he's given us. And in a
Mhm.
relationship, I think that's enormously important. Set
Mhm.
those limits. Look, if you need to say, look, every week each of us is going to grab $100 to have our fun money, I
Yeah.
think that's
Mhm.
very healthy.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I think that's very healthy. But when you're at $6,000 at the end of the month, you're living in a McMansion you can't afford to
Right.
furnish. You owe money on your taxes every year. You're robbing Peter to pay Paul, living paycheck to paycheck. Do you know that 68% of people in the United States live paycheck to paycheck?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Mhm.
So you wonder why relationships fail. But then the other thing is the big thing, and like I started with by talking about this, you got to set those goals.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You got to be okay. What is our goal? Do we want to get out of debt? Do we want to buy a house? Do we want to save for retirement? Do we have kids that are going to college? What are those things that are our goals that we want to focus on?
Mhm.
And look, here's the thing. God put people together for a purpose
That's
Right.
right.
because there's power in team. There's a power in the team. There's a power in
Right.
that partnership.
Mhm.
And one person can play off the other. I'm looking at you and you're a spender. Dude, I'm right there with you. I get it. Right? But your wife is the saver. So listen, if
Yes.
you have those weekly talks with her, if you get on the same page, you get on your
Mhm.
knees and pray about it together.
Yeah.
And look, the Lord will give you what you need. He gives
Right.
us what we need. I heard a funny one the other day. Somebody said this to me. I thought this was great. It talks about in the Bible, that the birds don't have to worry about where their next dollar
Mhm.
is coming from. So I did
Right.
this show about, should you have an emergency spending, or does that show you don't have any faith? And somebody said, well,
Mm.
you realize something, Ralph? Guess what? The birds had to get out the nest.
They did. Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So you just have to think about it in those terms. It's like, yes, the Lord will provide for you, but
Mhm.
you got to do the work.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I hope that answers your question because
Yes.
I
Yes.
really feel like there are so many and celebrate wins together. Now, don't
Right.
celebrate wins by going on a trip to Tahiti. That's not the right answer. Let's celebrate those things. If you set us like how many people don't have an emergency fund?
Right.
As a couple, set up and it doesn't have to be a lot. Set aside $10 a week.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then when you get the $500, bake a cake. I don't know, do something
Right.
Mhm.
that you
Right.
guys enjoy
Mhm.
doing, but celebrate those little wins because it's tough. Look, finances are not easy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
we have so many things coming at us because we have this constant battle, right? I call it the highlight reel, right? We go
Mhm.
on Facebook or on YouTube or on
Yep.
Mhm.
Instagram or TikTok, and you see, oh, look what this one's got, and
Right.
look what this one's got, right?
Yep.
And it creates this tension. And we have this tension of needs versus wants.
Mhm.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
that's really what it comes down to is like, so here's the bottom line for a relationship. Do you want to have a healthy relationship with your spouse? If the answer is yes, then you need to get on the same page.
Mhm.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's really that simple.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, Ralph. So Ralph, it's funny. Almost everything that you've said,
Mhm.
we've had this conversation over the last 13 minutes. It's like that's how recent we had this conversation. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Yeah.
Like I feel like it was only like 13 minutes ago. It might have been a day, it might have been over the last 2 or 3 days, but that's how recent we had this because, I'm the spender. I'm the one that says, hey, let's no, we don't have it like that, but let's just treat ourselves just a little bit, just a little, especially since we don't do it very often, so let's treat ourselves. So it's funny that some of the things that you said, I'm like, oh gosh, I'm in class right now.
Yes. Yes.
He's talking to me. He's
'Cause
preaching to me.
I'm one to say, yeah, we can spend and we can treat ourselves, but it still has to fit within the budget.
Right.
How does that work out? Because hey, how long do you have to save up to get to that? Or if you're
Right.
doing it now, then what do you have to do on the back end? So I understand. So as he said, this is something that we've been talking about
Yeah.
for quite some time, just trying to get back in alignment with God and
Right.
the purpose and being, like you said, good stewards over what he has given to us. Because we believe that, hey, nothing more is going to come to us if we can't steward properly the things that he has given to us right now. Like if we're not being good shepherds and good keepers of the little that we have,
Right.
then why would God bless us with abundance and give us even more? Like, hey, take care of
And
this
see,
and then you can give you more.
I start from a different perspective, right?
Okay.
I start for it's not yours anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm.
It's
Because
his.
if you have that mindset, like this is not mine.
You're right.
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 Like I can look around. I live on a beautiful 30-acre farm, but it's
Mhm.
not mine.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
It all
In my
belongs to
case, the
him.
mortgage company owns most of it, but you understand where I'm going with that, right?
Right. Right.
But the truth is, if you start off with the mentality that it's not mine to begin with,
Yeah.
and then another thing I encourage couples to do is have ways to be generous together.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And it doesn't have to be money. Maybe that's volunteering.
Yes.
Maybe
Mhm.
it's being involved with your church, because those
Mhm.
things are all going to cement that relationship.
Right.
And if you do those first fruits and show that generosity,
Right.
the Lord rewards this. And I'm not one of these guys like these prosperity preachers, like send me $100. That's nonsense, right?
Right. Right.
But the truth of the matter is being on the same page, celebrating those victories, and
Mhm.
it's not easy work.
Oh
And that's why
no.
I started off with prayer. You got to start there,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
because you're fixing to be in for a battle.
Right. Right. So you know what, Ralph? Gosh, I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Exactly. Yes.
Now I'm gonna go in the corner and cry. I'm like, he just gave me a beating, you know. So, but
So
no,
they
but
say iron sharpens iron, my friend.
Yes.
oh no, it does, it does. I'm joking about it, but no, it's really food for thought, and because we have had these conversations, and I have been practicing, in all honesty, what I've been preaching, about being better, about showing some more financial maturity, and growth and all of that.
Mhm.
And understanding her side as well, while she's holding back, while I might be a little more of a spender, and just trying to come to a better balance. So, but I really thank you for coming on the show and just helping us to relive it a little bit. But I hope that the listeners are taking this information as well, that no matter what position that we're in or what you're perceived as, all of us are going through it,
Mhm.
regardless of where we are, and where we are in our lives.
Yeah, I don't care if you make $20,000 a year or $2 million a year. Guess what? We're all going through the same thing.
Right,
That's the truth. And when we realize that because see, you see that highlight reel, right? You
right,
see that thing on Facebook. Look at the cats down the street. They just got that new car. But what they don't know is that cat don't have any money in his retirement account.
Right.
right,
Or, they're robbing Peter to pay Paul. They're maxed out to the hilt.
right,
But you see that highlight film. Oh,
right,
they got that fancy new red car.
right.
Mhm.
And see, I've been there. I've had the Mercedes. I've had the
Mm-hmm.
Corvette. I've had the Rolex watch. I've had the Breitling watch. But here's a truth bomb. I was completely empty when I had all of it.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Because you'll get to a point, and I stepped on a guy's toes the other day on my podcast because he reached out to me and he says, "Man, you hit me across the head with a 2x4."
Wow.
Because I made a simple thing. I said, ask yourself every time you spend money, does this build the Lord's kingdom?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Ask every time. I'm not saying don't go out and have a dinner with your wife. I'm not
Right.
saying that.
Right.
But if you're going to put a lot of money on the table, then start saying, does this fulfill my purpose?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Does this meet with what the kingdom is saying me to do? And look, like I said, that's not easy,
Right.
but we're all going through it. That's the thing you need to understand. There is hope. That's one of the things and my show is all about hope.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like I could be one
Mhm.
of these judgmental dudes, like gets on there and says, well, you should have done this and you should have done that. Who am I helping?
Right.
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 But if I can come, I'll liken it to this. I come alongside you, put my arm around you,
Mhm.
and I say, look, I've been down that same route.
Right.
And here's what I learned from it. Maybe you can listen to me. Maybe you could take a couple of morsels from that, make a batch of cookies with it or something
Right.
like that.
Right. Right.
But that's the whole point, because this is what God intends us for do. It's about community, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
Let's build each other up.
Right.
That's really the key to it, because we're all going through these three things. But like I said, start off with the understanding it's not yours to begin with.
Right. Right. So, Ralph, I appreciate you coming on. Please let everyone know where they can find you, where they can talk to you. And unfortunately, they might have the mirror put in their face like you did us, but where can they talk to you?
So the easiest thing to do, and it's real simple. The name of the show is Ask Ralph. So you go to askralph.com
Okay.
and you will find my show there. I do a daily audio show. I do a daily video show. It's on Rumble. It's on YouTube. We're on all the social media channels. And I did something really special for your audience,
Mhm.
because I thought, I want to give something they can take away. So I did something. I wrote a little, I guess you can call it like a little blog post for Stamble. But if they go to my website, if they go to askralphpodcast.com/nofruit, I've got a document for there, and it's called Practical Tips for Couples to Discuss Spending Habits Openly. And I feel like this is just that little nudge to get the conversation started. Like if you got a husband that's not listening, you print it out, leave it on the kitchen table, right? Or you set it on the nightstand, right? And then all of a sudden, but anyway, that's how you get in touch with me. I'm always available. I also do a live show every Tuesday. You can get to that by going to askralphpodcast.com/live. But if you go to askralph.com, that is the simplest way to do it. It's all there. I write a daily blog post. And people say, Ralph, how do you get everything done? I'm like, well, this is my mission field, right?
Right.
I don't have no choice because the Lord is speaking to me, saying, Ralph, go out there and preach. Like every day when I start my day, I started like this. Lord, what will you have me to do today?
Yes.
So I hope your listeners found value today, and I hope they connect with me because that's what I love to answer questions. Every day on the show, I answer someone's question. So, it could be a question about, hey, how do we save for retirement? This week, I've been doing all about taxes. When have you got to the point where you need to hire somebody to do your taxes? And then I said, well, how do you find that person? And then this is all going to be playing next week. I record my episodes a week in advance. So next week. And then I talked about, okay, what do you look for in a bad preparer? Like I laid out some scoundrels for you, right? And then I talk about, what happens if you get that notice? Like you got to the mailbox, right? You got this notice in the mail. Good night. What do I do now?
Right.
And then I talk today about red flags. So anyway, I encourage your listeners to just go to askralph.com. And if they want one-on-one, they can book a call with me right there.
Nice.
I love to work with individuals with the internet being what it is. I do work with people all over the world. So, it's just like you and I are talking here face to face. We'll do the exact same thing with anybody. And I can help you along that because sometimes you just need somebody to put their arm around you.
Right.
And tell you there is a way out of this.
Right.
I can't do it for you. Like I can't do it for you, but I can give you some tools because that's what money is. Money is a tool. And when you recognize that money is simply a tool, just like a carpenter needs a hammer. Same thing.
Yeah.
Cool. So again, we thank you very much for coming on the show, Ralph. But we do have one last question. Just one more. So, Kaf.
So, Ralph, again, this has been great, and you shared so many stories. But some of the things that you had talked about leads me to this last question. If you could sing a duet with anyone in the world, living or deceased, Ralph, who would you sing that duet with?
Oh, boy, that's a tough one. Man, you stumped me on that one because I was not expecting that one at all. Like, you know what? I'm vamping right now because I'm trying to think of a good answer.
Oh,
So I'll be honest with you. You know who I really like? I'm a country music person.
Okay,
right?
Okay.
I really like Carrie Underwood.
Oh, yes.
yes. Okay.
And I think that she has an angelic voice.
Nice.
And I've heard a few of her Christian hymns and
Yes.
stuff like that. That's definitely one. And then Alan Jackson's another
Okay.
country guy I really like. But so that's where I'm going to go with that because
Great.
Blessed Assurance, Jesus is mine.
Mine, yes.
Right.
I heard Carrie Underwood sing that not too long ago, and I think we all need to have that in our mind. We get these playbacks going on in our mind. And if we fill our minds with good stuff, then I think good stuff
They'll
comes
come
from
back
it. Then we
out, yeah.
reflect the positive light into the world, not this negativity.
Yeah.
Right.
what
That's
no-
a great question. I might have to use that on my show one time. You straight up, oh boy, you got me on that one. I'm sitting my wife later, we're fixing to go out to dinner. I'm gonna say like, boy, they stumped me on this one.
We have to end the show, off kilter a little bit,
I like it.
because sometimes the show can be a little hard and rough and whatever,
Heavy,
but it also picks up the spirits as well, the morale,
Yes.
so yeah, that's all, just something offbeat.
I love it. Now, if you can get in touch with Carrie Underwood, I'd love to have her on my show. We can
Okay.
talk about all kinds of
I
stuff.
mean, I
There
know
you
some
go,
people in
man.
the music industry. Let's see what we could
There
do.
we go. Very good. Fantastic.
But Ralph, thank you
Thanks
very
so
much for coming on, man.
You're very welcome. I appreciate the time, and God bless both of you.
All right, you
bless you.
too. And thank you very much for listening to the No Fruit Podcast, and we will talk to you a little later.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the No Fruit Podcast, where we bring you fruitful conversations, ripened wisdom, and love that's deeply rooted. We hope today's discussion left you feeling uplifted, encouraged, and ready to take on life's journey with purpose. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who could use a little inspiration in their day. You can catch up on past episodes, send us your thoughts, or learn more about us on social media. Until next time, stay rooted in love, and remember, every seed you plant today shapes the fruit of tomorrow. Take care, and we'll see you next time.